ACC. So with the ACC, we had, which is the American Athletic, or no, it's the ACC. I don't remember what the acronym stands for, but they have a lot of good schools in here. You got Clemson, Florida State, Louisville, NC State, who's all right, and then they got Syracuse, Wake Forest, and Boston College on the Atlantic Division. Those bottom three, Syracuse, Wake Forest, and Boston College, aren't really big players in the sense anymore. They're still good, but they're not like really going to contend for anything. But if you look over at the Coastal Division, you have North Carolina, Pitt, Miami, Florida, Duke, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and Georgia Tech. And with that, you kind of got that Coastal's kind of stacked, but not really. And what I mean by that is that North Carolina and Miami, or well, usually just North Carolina is at the top. I think in the future, Miami and Duke will start working their way up there too. And Pitt is obviously, they're usually about 8-5 every year. And with Virginia Tech, they just lost Frank Beamer, and I don't know what they're going to do with his replacement and all that stuff. Virginia is not really good, and then Georgia Tech just kind of had a down year, I guess. I remember last year they were like talking top 10 for them, and now they didn't even get 4 wins. So 4 schools I'm going to talk about here are Clemson, North Carolina, and I guess Miami I'll talk about. So starting off with Miami, with them being the lowest, I know Miami has a good program built around them. They have Mike Richt coming in from Georgia, and they have Brad Kaya, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, which I'll be talking about that here in a little bit. And they have a couple other guys, but they need a better schedule coming up, because I'm looking at their schedule. They're not really playing anyone really good here until they got Nebraska week 3, and then Cincinnati. Wow, Cincinnati beat them. But they start out with Bethune-Cookman, who's not really a good school, but that's beside the point. They got FIU, then they get into their conference schedule. So when I'm thinking about Miami, I think of the U and their big defensive school. But it's kind of flipped scripts now, because they're more of an offensive school with Brad Kaya, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, like I mentioned. They had Duke Johnson last year, but they don't anymore. But I believe they replaced him with a good running back in Yearby. And then they got a couple receivers on the outside that can do some stuff, and they're getting a couple more people in the coming weeks or coming year that are going to be like freshmen or coming off a red shirt. I think Miami's in a good spot now. They got a better team. They're obviously not going to be able to compete with the higher up guys like Florida State or Clemson or North Carolina, but Miami is a good school. I think they're going to be set for the future, but I still think they're going to get blown out by North Carolina like they did this year. They lost 59-21, but they will beat the teams that they're supposed to, like Georgia Tech and Pitt and Virginia and Duke. At the moment, Duke might get better in the future. I think with their head coach being Cutcliffe, they're going to get a lot better. So it's going to be something to watch there. And then looking at another school in the ACC, we have, I just clicked to that, we have Florida State. And like I said, Florida State lost to end their season against Houston. I think they're kind of in flux after losing Jameis Winston. Sean McGuire looked kind of comparable, but I don't know about him anymore. He's obviously a good quarterback because he was a 4-star and all that coming out of high school, and he can compete at the D1 level, I believe, but I don't know if he can compete at the ACC level. I do remember that they brought in Everett Golston kind of to give McGuire another year. And then McGuire kind of showed out in the Houston game, kind of. Like I said, he had 390 yards, and he had a bunch of yards in some other games and stuff too. But what really worries me, just looking at their schedule, I think they beat the teams they should have, but then they lost to Georgia Tech, which obviously Georgia Tech could be good, could be bad. and they held Clemson close, and Clemson was the #1 team all year, and I thought that was pretty impressive. They only lost by 10, 23-13. But the most worrying part, outside of losing to AAC school, is that Florida, who was they were a good school, and they are a good defensive school, like always, with Jim McElwain. I think they get their quarterback and a couple other guys coming in next year. They're going to be good. But they only scored 27 on Florida's offense, or Florida's defense, which I think they couldn't really stop Dalvin Cook. He had 183 and 2 touchdowns on 26 carries. And McGuire just had 160. So, or passing, I should say. McGuire only had 160 passing. So I think they need to kind of lean on Dalvin Cook a little bit and then make some play action stuff off that. I think going into next year, they're kind of set offensively behind Dalvin Cook, and then McGuire looks kind of compatible, whatever it is. And he looks like a good running back or a good quarterback. McGuire does, and I think he's going to be good in the future. They just need to get him a little bit more coaching with Jimbo Fisher and stuff, like actually teaching him how to be a quarterback and not make bad throws and stuff like that. So I think they're going to be set for the future. I think they're going to lean on Dalvin Cook a lot next year, and he's one of the Heisman candidates if they do that. So I guess that's all I can really say about Florida State. They're going to be good for the next couple of years. They're kind of set as long as they have Dalvin Cook and as long as their defense is good, like always. So moving on to Clemson. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about North Carolina real quick. I'm not going to read off their schedule. I'm just going to give a quick thought on the next year. They're going to be good next year. They have most of their key pieces coming back on offense and most of them on defense too. I think if they just keep up how they ended the season with momentum, they beat a lot of schools. I mean, they did lose to Baylor, but they did manage to put up 38 points in the bowl game against them. But going into the end of the year, they trounced Duke 66-31. They absolutely killed Miami 59-21. They only beat Virginia Tech by 3, 30-27. Beat North Carolina State 45-35. Almost beat Clemson. They only lost by 8, and then they lost to Baylor by 11. But I think they have a lot of the pieces in place to make a good run next year into being a really good, top-notch school and all that. So I think they're set for next year. And then I'm going to talk about the actual winner of the ACC, Clemson. And I think Clemson they're good. They have Deshaun Watson. They have good receivers in that freshman. Here's the guy. They have Deion Kane. Like I was thinking, Hunter Renfrow is someone to really watch next year at the wide receiver position. And they got a bunch of pieces here. They got like Willie Gallman, who's a running back. He only had 45 in the national championship game, but as I was watching that game, I saw that he was kind of bouncing off tackles and breaking a lot of stuff. I don't know why they didn't give it to him more. I guess they were playing behind, so they couldn't really run the clock out. They're trying to get some passes with Watson. He's going to be those two are going to be really good running mates in the future here. I guess the other guy, receiver-wise, is Peak, Renfrow, and Leggett. Also got really good there. Got really good pieces there just to compete. And then their defense is stout. They had the number 6 defense in the nation this year. And I think that they're just set, kind of. Like I said, they beat Florida State, beat Miami pretty handily, beat South Carolina, beat North Carolina, and then they beat Oklahoma by 20 and then only lost to Alabama by 5. I think that they have the defense for this to play really well and just be really like top-notch, top-tier school, and they're going to stay in the talk for the national championship over the next couple of years, at least next year with Watson coming back. They need to add a couple pieces on offense so that Watson's not the only playmaker, and that's how they're really going to do it. They're going to rely on their defense, and then they're going to have Watson, who's really good, play I guess, the best ball of his life, and he's going to be really good, like always, like he has been the past couple weeks, or last year and this year. So I think that they're set for a couple years. They got a weak kind of conference in ACC. There's only really Florida State to compete with them. Miami's not competing next year, but they're going to be down the road. If they give Rick a couple more years, they're going to compete, but not next year. So I think this is Clemson's division or conference to lose. I think North Carolina and Florida State will also compete for it, but the Coastal is kind of logjam there. UNC will come out on top, and Clemson will come out on top, unless Florida State pulls off a miracle and beats Clemson. So we're going to move on to the next conference, which is the Big 12.